In the shadowy aftermath of World War II, the world found itself cleaved in two by the ideological chasm of the Cold War. Paranoia became the currency of nations, and the United States government was no exception. Within the nascent Central Intelligence Agency, a deep-seated fear of Soviet, Chinese, and North Korean brainwashing techniques began to fester. This fear was not entirely unfounded, as American prisoners of war had returned from Korea bearing strange, seemingly coerced confessions. The CIA's director, Allen Dulles, a man well versed in the dark arts of espionage, decided that America needed to not only catch up but surpass its enemies in the realm of mind control. Thus, in the spring of 1953, one of the most sinister and secretive programs in American history was born, Project MKUltra. Its official, sanitized purpose was to develop chemical and biological weapons. But its true, hidden agenda was the complete mastery of the human mind. The project was placed under the command of a brilliant but ruthless chemist named Sidney Gottlieb. Gottlieb was tasked with finding a truth serum and exploring any and all methods of psychological manipulation, no matter how ethical. The scope of MKUltra was vast and terrifyingly ambitious, branching out into over 150 individual subprojects. These subprojects were farmed out to more than 80 institutions, including prestigious universities, hospitals, and even prisons. Many of these institutions were unaware of the CIA's direct involvement, believing they were conducting legitimate, albeit unusual, research. At the heart of Gottlieb's chemical arsenal was a substance that would become infamous: lysergic acid diethylamide, or LSD. The CIA purchased the world's entire supply of LSD, saying its reality-shattering potential as the ultimate key to unlocking the mind. Early experiments were conducted on CIA agents themselves, often without their full knowledge or consent. 9 days later, Olson plunged to his death from a New York hotel window in a case that remains shrouded in suspicion. His death was officially ruled a suicide, but his family would fight for decades to uncover the truth of the CIA's involvement. But the program's reach extended far beyond the confines of the agency. MKUltra's operatives set up safe houses in major cities like New York and San Francisco. These safe houses were equipped with one-way mirrors and recording devices to observe the effects of drugs on unsuspecting individuals. Under a subproject codenamed Operation Midnight Climax, prostitutes were hired to lure men back to these apartments. Once there, the men would be given food or drink laced with LSD and other psychoactive substances. CIA agents would then watch from behind the glass, taking meticulous notes on the subject's altered states of consciousness. The goal was to study the effects of LSD and to see if it could be used to extract information or control behavior during interrogations. These experiments were a complete violation of human rights, performed on unwitting American citizens. The subjects were chosen from the margins of society, people the CIA believed would not be missed. This included drug addicts, the mentally ill, and prisoners who had no power to consent or object. In one particularly horrific subproject, Dr. Ewan Cameron at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal conducted brutal experiments. Funded by the CIA, Cameron attempted to depattern and reprogram his patients. Many of these patients had come to him for minor psychological issues like anxiety or depression. Cameron subjected them to massive doses of electroshock therapy, far beyond any therapeutic level. He put them into drug-induced comas for weeks or even months at a time. During these comas, they were forced to listen to looped audio messages, a technique he called psychic driving. The result was catastrophic. Many patients were left permanently debilitated, their memories erased, and their personalities destroyed. Were reduced to an infantile state, having to relearn basic skills like talking and walking. MKUltra was not just about drugs. It also explored hypnosis as a tool for control. Subproject 5, for instance, was dedicated to studying the potential of inducing anxiety and altering personality through hypnotic suggestion. The CIA wanted to know if they could create unwitting assassins or couriers who would have no memory of their actions. They investigated sensory deprivation, isolation, and various forms of psychological and physical abuse. The program even delved into the occult, hiring a magician to teach agents sleight of hand for administering drugs covertly. This subproject, known as Subproject 4, highlighted the no-holds-barred approach of the agency. For 2 decades, MKUltra operated in the deepest shadows, a testament to the unchecked power of the intelligence community. The program's existence was a closely guarded secret, known only to a handful of individuals at the highest levels. The experiments continued, a dark undercurrent to the cultural and political upheavals of the 1960s. Ironically, the very drug the CIA hoped to control, LSD, was leaking out into the counterculture, fueling a movement of rebellion. The end for MKUltra began in the early 1970s, as the political climate in Washington shifted. With the Watergate scandal eroding public trust in government, the CIA grew nervous about its most damning secrets. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms, one of the program's architects, made a fateful decision. He ordered all records pertaining to Project MKUltra to be destroyed. It was a desperate attempt to erase the program from history, to bury the truth forever. However, a clerical error saved some of the program's financial records from the shredder. These documents, though heavily redacted, provided the first tantalizing clues about the program's existence and scale. In 1974, investigative journalist Seymour Hersh published a bombshell report in the New York Times about illegal CIA activities. His article opened the floodgates, leading to widespread public outrage and demands for a full investigation. This led to the formation of the Church Committee in the Senate, tasked with investigating abuses by intelligence agencies. The committee's hearings in 1975 brought the horrors of MKUltra into the harsh light of day. Survivors and their families came forward to tell their stories of abuse and suffering. The nation watched in horror as the details of the CIA's mind control experiments were revealed. The committee's final report condemned MKUltra as a program of unethical and illicit activities. It exposed a shocking disregard for human life and the rule of law within the nation's most powerful intelligence agency. The legacy of MKUltra is one of profound tragedy and enduring mistrust. It serves as a chilling reminder of what can happen when secrecy and power go unchecked. For the victims and their families, the revelations brought validation but not always justice. Many of the perpetrators escaped any real consequences for their actions due to the destruction of records and the passage of time. The full extent of the program's damage may never be known, as so many stories were buried with the shredded documents. The secret truth of the MKUltra Subprojects is a dark chapter in history. It reveals a hidden war fought not on battlefields, but in the uncharted territory of the human mind. The project officially began under the shadow of Cold War paranoia. Its primary goal was to gain an advantage in the art of psychological warfare. Gottlieb, the project's chief, was often called the Black Sorcerer. He was driven by a fervent belief that the mind was a fortress that could be breached. Subproject 68 in Montreal became a house of horrors for unsuspecting patients. Dr. Cameron's methods were a brutal form of psychological demolition. He used a device called the Page-Russell belt for prolonged sleep therapy. Patients were stripped of their identities and memories in the name of science. The CIA's funding was funneled through a front organization called the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. This provided a layer of plausible deniability for both the agency and the researchers. The experiments on prisoners were particularly cruel, exploiting their powerlessness. At the federal penitentiary in Atlanta, inmates were given LSD for weeks on end. They were promised reduced sentences in exchange for their participation in the medical studies. One notable subject was the infamous mobster Whitey Bulger. Later claimed the LSD experiments induced psychosis and nightmares that plagued him for life. The search for a truth serum led to the testing of a wide array of drugs. These included barbiturates, amphetamines, and even heroin. The agency also explored the use of paralytic agents and electric shocks in interrogations. The CIA's obsession with control extended to the animal kingdom. They studied ways to use animals for surveillance and even as weapons. The ethical lines were not just crossed, they were completely erased. The program's secrecy was paramount, with agents using code names and front companies. Gottlieb himself would personally deliver his chemical concoctions across the globe. He was involved in plots to assassinate foreign leaders, including Fidel Castro. The agency considered lacing Castro's cigars with a potent psychedelic. Another plot involved a poisoned wetsuit intended for the Cuban leader. These assassination plots, though mostly unsuccessful, showed the depths of the agency's ruthlessness. The destruction of the MKUltra files in 1973 was a profound act of historical vandalism. It ensured that countless stories of suffering would never be fully told. 20,000 documents that survived were a fluke, a bureaucratic oversight. These financial records became the Rosetta Stone for understanding the program's structure. The Church Committee hearings were a landmark moment in American history. For the first time, the public saw the dark side of its own intelligence apparatus. The testimony of victims was heartbreaking and infuriating. They spoke of lost time, shattered minds, and lives irrevocably broken. In the wake of the scandal, President Gerald Ford issued an executive order to prohibit drug testing on unwitting subjects. It was a direct response to the abuses revealed in the MKUltra hearings. However, the specter of MKUltra continues to haunt the public imagination. It has become a cornerstone of conspiracy theories about government control. The truth, in this case, was indeed stranger and more disturbing than fiction. The program's methods laid the groundwork for the CIA's later interrogation techniques. The psychological torture detailed in the Senate torture report has clear echoes of MKUltra. The quest for a silver bullet to control the human mind proved to be a dangerous illusion. Instead of a tool of control, the CIA unleashed forces it could not manage. The story of MKUltra is a cautionary tale about the seductive allure of absolute power. It highlights the vital importance of oversight and accountability in a democracy. The victims of these hidden experiments deserve to be remembered. Their suffering was a price paid for a secret war fought in the shadows. The project's tendrils reached into the very fabric of American society. Universities that participated were often unaware of the ultimate goals. Researchers were seduced by generous funding and the promise of groundbreaking work. The ethical compromises were made gradually, one small step at a time. The use of hypnosis was explored to create split personalities. Pagans wanted to see if a person could carry out a task and then have no memory of it. The experiments were a perversion of the healing arts. Doctors who participated violated their Hippocratic oath to do no harm. The legacy of fear and paranoia it created within the government was immense. The program's exposure led to new guidelines for human experimentation. The Belmont Report, a foundational text in research ethics, was a direct result. Yet, the complete story remains elusive, buried in ashes and redactions. The secret truth is a mosaic of confirmed facts, survivor testimony, and lingering questions. It stands as a stark warning against the dark potential of unchecked state power. The experiments were not confined to labs. They happened in plain sight. The psychological fallout for the unwitting participants was immeasurable. Families were torn apart by the unexplained changes in their loved ones. The CIA's internal justification was that the ends justified the means. They believed they were in a race against an evil enemy. This fear was used to rationalize the most heinous of acts. The project's code name, Ultra, has become synonymous with mind control. Its story continues to be explored in books, films, and documentaries. Each new telling attempts to piece together the fragmented truth. The search for accountability for the victims continues to this day. The hidden experiments of the CIA remain a deep scar on the American psyche.